Welcome back to another episode of the All Yellow Jackets podcast. I am your host, Jackson Caudell, the publisher of AllYellowJackets.com, coming to you on Monday afternoon, 2 days after an unbelievable football game on Saturday. We're going to dig into all that. If you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell whenever new content comes out. If you're listening on podcast form, be sure to leave a review. Let us know how we're doing here. And just enjoy the show. So yeah, that's what an unbelievable. I haven't been doing this profession for a long time. I'm still finding my footing and everything, but I don't think I will ever experience or see a football game that ends quite like that or anything like that ever happen again. It was truly unbelievable to see it all unfold in person. Um, you know, from Miami not kneeling the ball to trying to figure out if his knee was down or whether the ball was out first, to an offense that has not moved the ball all game long without the help of turnovers, to all of a sudden being able to go 70-something yards in 26 seconds and score a touchdown against, again, a defense that they couldn't move the ball against for the majority of the game unless they were set up in favorable field position. But, man, there's just a lot to break down from this game with just from how Georgia Tech performed. Obviously Miami helped them out a little bit there. But it's a huge win. It's a huge win because, I have to admit, I didn't know how this team was going to respond coming into this game, and I picked them to lose. I own that, and I didn't know if the game was going to be all that close either because there were several matchups in this game that worried me, from whether it was Miami's run game and how well they'd been performing this year to Miami's defense, and there were some things I was definitely wrong about, and just in terms of how that played out, but. We'll talk about just recapping the game, and then obviously big picture stuff like what does this win mean now? I talked pretty extensively last week that I thought the loss to Bowling Green pretty much ended the bowl game hopes. Now they're back on. This college football is strange in that way, where you're in despair one week and then you're the talk of the town. I think most people are talking about the decision that Miami made or didn't make in this case, but that this game has been the main talking point around college football pretty much all weekend, and it's funny how things work out that way. But I guess just getting into the game, as you have to look at it from a holistic view, not just the ending is incredible and will never be forgotten. I mean, it's up there with the 2015 game against Florida State in terms of just incredible finishes for this program and wins. But as a whole, let's talk about the game and some things that I'm still a little worried about, and some things I think that were good. I guess I want to start with the defense. Usually we start with the offense and how they're playing because they've been the better side of the football team this season. So, but this defense, when you look at the box score, like Miami still had nearly 400 yards. Like they are a little over 400 yards. Like the Hurricanes still move the ball pretty effectively and finished with 453 yards, outgained Georgia Tech 453 to 250. I will say the defense, I think it was just in terms of they were switching up coverages. I think that Kevin Sherr did an excellent job of confusing Tyler Van Dyke, who pretty much played mistake-free football as much as you can through the first 4 games of the season. Like there was a lot of times he was either hesitant or just really late to throws. And I think one of the knocks on Van Dyke has been, when he has to play out of structure, when things are not schemed open for him, and he's not as good. And I think the defensive staff took notice of that a little bit because you could just see it when they took the deep shots away for the most part and tried to keep it the short game in. And look, Miami's slot receiver Xavier Restrepo, we talked about him on the show last week. He's a very good player. He's a very good college wide receiver and a very good slot player, and he was going to get his. I had a good feeling that he was going to produce and get numbers in this game. But what Georgia Tech really did, outside of a couple plays, I know Colby Young burned them deep on one play. They really contained the deep ball pretty well. They didn't allow a huge number of explosive plays. I know Miami finished the game with a very low explosive play rate. And that was one thing that I talked about, in terms of trying to pull an upset, outside of Restrepo, I think the Miami receivers really had a lot of still had some questions. I know Jacoby George, Colby Young, that those guys had some big moments in the game against Texas A&M. But other than that, they really hadn't shown a lot in their careers, and they didn't really do much against Georgia Tech either. I know Jacoby George had like one or two personal foul penalties that really put Miami in a bad position. But I think just when you watched the defense, like you could tell there was a difference. It wasn't that, they just strangleholded Miami's offense and held them to under 300 yards and all this, but they did a great job of mixing up coverages. I thought some of the blitzes were very well timed. I know Paul Maala got a sack there towards the end of the game on Van Dyke, and that was a very good call. And I think that the run defense was what I was most impressed with. Like the tackling was much better, not perfect, but it was much better than what we've seen in recent games, whether it was Bowling Green, Louisville, whatever. The tackling was much better, and I think the run fits were much better. Like players looked like they were where they were supposed to be, which was a problem for the first few games. Is just either hesitancy, not attacking, and just being out of position so many times. They didn't look that way Saturday. Like Miami, who had the number one rushing offense in the ACC coming into this game, were mostly held in check by Georgia Tech's defense. 165 yards rushing, only averaging 3.5 yards per rush. And, there were a few times where it looked like Miami was starting to pick up a little momentum on the ground, and then Tech just halted it. And I think, the linebackers have taken some heat this season for their level of play, and the defensive line has as well. But they did play better in this game. Like the tackling was much better. The run fits were much better. I think that the players overall were just in a better position. And I think, you have to give a lot of that credit to Kevin Sherrer. I mean, for putting this together in a week and putting together a really good game plan against an offense that has been torching everybody. Look, I know they've beaten up on a relatively simple schedule of Miami, Ohio, Bethune-Cookman, Temple, and Texas A&M secondary is pretty bad. But you have to give credit where it's due. A week earlier, you're allowing 38 points to Bowling Green and not being able to stop them on third down and stop the run, to stopping one of the highest ranked offenses in college football. Again, credit where it's due. Now the question is, all right, are all these tendencies, changes, are teams going to catch on to this? Like, are teams going to be able to prepare for this defense a little bit differently now that they know what Kevin Sherrer is going to do when he's calling the defense? We'll see. They're obviously Georgia Tech's off this week. When they come back against Boston College, who has their quarterback, their offense is pretty decent. They have a pretty good quarterback, but we'll dig in more into them next week. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what teams do to try to counteract what Georgia Tech's defense did in this game. Now, the pass rush and the tackles for loss are still – it wasn't fantastic. Outside of Maala, they didn't get a sack on Van Dyke. They didn't get a ton of pressure on him. And again, Miami has one of the best offensive lines in the country. Pass protection-wise, they've kept him clean pretty much all year. But I still think that being able to get pressure on the quarterback is going to be a big thing for this defense to figure out. But they were able to force the turnovers. What did we say on the podcast last week? To pull big upsets when you were 3 touchdown underdogs, like there's almost no scenario where you don't win the turnover margin and you win the game. Like if you don't win the turnover margin as a big underdog, like you're a big underdog for a reason. You're either going up against a very good team or you're really bad. Sometimes it's both. And you just have to hope the other team makes mistakes. And for this, it wasn't just Miami shooting themselves in the foot. I think, again, you have to credit Sherrer mixing up the coverages, giving Van Dyke some different looks. I think that just flat confused him. Like he just did not look like the same player that, I watched the first 4 weeks, when I was looking at Miami tape last week. Like he just didn't look like the same player and didn't look like the same kind of confidence. And it looked like, oh, they're taking this away now. What am I going to do? And tried to force some things and just had some very poor throws. So credit to them. Georgia Tech's defense for doing that. But, being able to force turnovers is just one of the pillars of a big upset. Like, you have to be able to do it. And if you're not, then you have to play pretty much perfect on the offensive side of the ball, which I just didn't think was very realistic. Like, you're just not going to play perfect on that side of the ball against a defense like that. And their defense is very good, as they showed throughout the game. So, all in all, look, I think this was a huge bounce-back game for the linebackers. I think Paul Maala played a really excellent game. And it was great to see the safeties making plays. I know LaMiles has been banged up a little bit this year, and he looked fantastic on Saturday. He got the pick in the end zone, was just really good in coverage all the way around. Jalen King got his third interception of the season. I know he's up near the top of the ACC in terms of interception and forcing turnovers. So it's been great to see him have the kind of season he's had, bouncing back from that injury he got in the Pitt game last year. So really, really excited to see that secondary be able to make plays. And the corners did pretty good in coverage. Like they held up pretty well. Wasn't perfect. I don't think there was any aspect of this game that was perfect outside of like the final drive or something. But yeah, it was just an all-around good game for the defense. But now, again, the questions going forward are going to be, okay, if teams adjust to you, how can you counteract it? Like, is this just Miami hasn't seen this defense coordinated by Kevin Sherrer before, but now that Boston College has seen it, now that Virginia's seen it, now that North Carolina's seen it, are they going to be able to say, all right, here's what we know we can do? Got to be able to adjust. Brent Key talks about self-scouting all the time. Got to put it in action now. Like you have to be able to adjust on the fly. Linebackers played well. Secondary played well. I do think the pass rush needs to be a little bit better from the front four, but other than that, they did their job. They held up in the red zone. They bent, but they didn't break, which, again, we talked about it last week. Force turnovers and play red zone roulette when they get in the red zone. Don't allow touchdowns. If they get down there, hold up, force a field goal, force turnovers, and for the most part, they did that. Like those were the keys we outlined last week. And look, Mario Cristobal was a big factor in helping Georgia Tech get this win. But don't overlook those factors either. And that should give them positive momentum because Miami is one of the better offenses on paper. They're going to play the rest of the way. I know North Carolina is on the schedule, Georgia's on the schedule, but I think Miami has a better offense than either Boston College, Virginia, Syracuse, or Clemson. I think. Like, I still don't think Clemson is the best offense out there. But again, I'd give the defensive performance a B+. Not perfect, but much better than what we've seen the past couple weeks. All right, let's transition to the other side of the football, which for the most part this season has been pretty good. You've had, again, we've talked about the lulls this offense has had, whether it was the second half against Louisville, stretches of the game against Ole Miss, a lot of the game against Bowling Green outside of those first two drives. This whole game was not very good, especially in the first half on offense. And look, Miami didn't get a ton of sacks on Haynes King, but you could tell their speed and athleticism up front was just it was tough to handle. And that was a worry of mine going into the week is Miami is very good on the defensive line. They have probably 2 or 3 legitimate NFL players, including a possible first-round pick. So I didn't think the offensive line played all that great, especially in the run. Like the run game completely went nowhere. I think they finished with under 100 yards. Haynes King was affected all night. Like he was somewhat effective on his legs from time to time, but overall was just not able to constantly get in a rhythm like we've seen. Now, he made the drive that mattered, obviously, but just on a down-to-down basis, he just really was not able to get it going. And I think a lot of that had to do with the pressure that Miami was being able to put on him, whether there was a couple blitzes. Like he took some hard shots. I know one of Miami's linebackers came in on a blitz and absolutely crushed him. And he just looked off for a large majority of that game. Again, the run game not being able to get anything going, I think it's a hindrance when you're being one dimensional. And look, I wanted them to be pass heavy in this game. I said it. I didn't think they could run on Miami. They need to be able to throw the ball around on them to score. and that sort of kind of played out. Not really, but again, Miami shut down the run game. Georgia Tech was able to find just enough in the passing game to get by, but overall, this kind of repeat performance just can't happen. This is a team that, yes, the defense played better, but the offense has got to be able to score consistently. And look, until they play Georgia or Clemson, you're not going to face an offense or a defense this good again. So, like, there's a bright spot now. Like, they should be able to score points on Boston College, Virginia, Syracuse. North Carolina's defense is better, but, like, I'm not going to put it in the upper tier yet. But it has to be better. Just point blank period, from being explosive to running the football, to not turning the ball. Like, we saw it in the Bowling Green game a little bit when Haynes tries to push the ball down the field. Sometimes in the past couple weeks he has made some questionable decisions. Aside from that final drive, like Miami safety James Williams, Haynes threw into triple coverage, and it was probably one of the easier interceptions that he's going to get all season. But really, they did take some advantage of the red zone opportunities that they got, and that's the defense. Again, we just talked about it. The defense put the offense in position to win the game. Like, Georgia Tech, until the final drive, could not drive the ball on Miami. Like, you look at their drive chart, like 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out in the first half, and then they were set up with the Jalen King interception that got them the fumble. It was a struggle to move the football. Finishing when you are on pace to finish for under 200 yards in a football game, it's not a good sign. And until the final drive, that's what happened, and that's just what makes the game all the more shocking, is that all of a sudden they were able to piece together that great final drive. But you have to tip your hat to them for get pushing the ball down the field, recognizing the situation. Hey, you don't have any timeouts. Like, we got to get the ball down the field. There were a couple of breakdowns in Miami's coverage, obviously, but going forward, just the offense just has to be more efficient, more explosive, everything. Like, I'm hoping to see the running game get back on track at some point. Hopefully the offensive line will start to just keep gradually improving. Like, they weren't terrible, but the not being able to open up any lanes in the running game, and Miami did enough to affect Haynes King in the pass rush. And then the receivers, until the end, were not able to make a lot of plays. And I think you have to credit Miami's secondary for that. They have a very good defense, and it's going to be one of the best that Georgia Tech's seen all season. So overall, obviously I'm repeating myself a little bit, but just, being more consistent and starting faster. Like, Georgia Tech they've been pretty good starting this year and have had trouble in the second half. I think you have to give them a little bit of credit for performing better in the second half on offense. But just hopefully the offense can figure things out and gradually improve. And look, you got a whole second half of the season coming up. You got to get 3 more wins to get to a bowl game. The offense has been one of the best in the ACC. Got to keep playing like it. So I guess, now it's always fun to talk about big picture stuff. So what does this win mean? I have to take back everything I said last week. I think now that they beat Miami, if they win the games they need to and should, this team can make a bowl game for the first time since 2018. Now, obviously, those games I'm talking about are Boston College next weekend, not this weekend, but next, Virginia on the road, and Syracuse at home. If you win those 3 games, you're 6-6 and you're in a bowl game, and that is tangible progress. Nobody expected much from this team nationally. Their projected win total was at 4.5. If you can get to 6 wins, it's a huge victory. Now, could they get more? I don't know. Maybe. I think you can't never count out because I think at this point, it's just Brent Key is 3-0 on the road against ranked teams in the ACC. He finds a way to get up for these bigger games when they are big underdogs and find a way to win. Now, he doesn't win all the time. They were big underdogs against Florida State last year. They were big underdogs against Georgia. but he has shown the ability to play pretty well in those spots. And there are going to be 3 spots the rest of the season where they are big underdogs against North Carolina, Clemson, and Georgia, where maybe they can steal a win. Look, I'm still on record saying I don't think that's likely. They're going to be 2 touchdown underdogs minimum in those games, but I think it'd be foolish to completely count them out and stealing one. They've had great success against North Carolina the past couple of years. They're not bulletproof. Clemson has obviously. I don't know if y'all watched them this past weekend, but they struggled with a Wake team that Georgia Tech beat by 14. They're not invincible. Games on the road, they could be ranked. That's the Brent Key recipe: be an underdog on the road against a ranked ACC team. Victory. But I do think it does show their ability to move forward after what happened against Bowling Green, because that was a huge question. Losing a game against a team like that is a huge letdown, and it was just there were scenarios I could have seen this playing out where if Miami rolled over them, the season start to just snowball out of control. That they didn't let that happen, and I think that most everybody is going to talk about the knee that wasn't taken, or the Miami safeties being nowhere to be seen on the final drive, and the fumble and all that. But I do think it does show that like this team does not give up at all. And some people will overlook that or laugh at it. It's not a skill or anything like that, but it does show that this team's ability. They're going to keep fighting as long as Brent Key's the head coach. Like that much I am certain of. And I think you have proof of it now. I kind of wanted to see some proof. Last year I don't think was enough to go off of, given all the situations. But I do think, getting off the map, going on the road. I know Miami is not the toughest road environment, but going on the road, getting a win in that fashion, and just holding that never belief that they were going to win the football game, I think shows a lot about them. And now the thing is, can you handle it? And can you handle the success that can come with it? Like, people are talking good about you now after, being on you last week. Can you handle that? I think it's a good thing, and I have no evidence to support this. I think it's maybe a good thing the bye week came this week, where maybe you're still focused all on the Miami game, the good feelings after that, and having to play a Boston College team who, by the way, is also on a bye week this week, and they really need that game if they want to get to a bowl game. Their head coach, Jeff Hafley, if you read around, he's probably on the hot seat. They lost to Northern Illinois already this season, almost lost to Holy Cross. They really need a win, and, on paper, one of the wins they could get is coming down to Atlanta and beating Georgia Tech. So I think how Georgia Tech comes out in that game, well, again, it's another measuring stick for maturity and improvement. Like, now they'll get a week off now, and they'll have to come back completely focused for a team that is going to give them their best shot. Like, I don't know how Georgia Tech keeps sneaking up on people after what they did against Pitt and North Carolina last year. And, they hung tight with Georgia for the first half of the game last year. But they keep sneaking up on people, and I don't know that that's going to happen the rest of the year. But a bowl game is definitely in play now. They're 2-1 in the ACC, potentially could be 3-1. That's a big deal. Like, they're a few bounces away from being a 5-1 football team. So it's this week is definitely a win in every aspect, from the way it was won, just winning the game in general, putting this team back on a track to possibly make a bowl game, to, you beat another ranked team on the road, and just everything. Like, it was just a complete win. It was unbelievable to watch. It absolutely was. And now it's going to be a very interesting second half. Take care of the business they should. A bowl game is possible. And again, that should be the goal this season, to get to a bowl game, show progress, and just keep moving forward. So I will still, there's still plenty of content coming this week. We'll be talking about just kind of mid-season stuff in general, like, looking at the positions, is this where we think are they where we thought they would be at the beginning of the season? Some things that have gone right, some things that have maybe not gone so good, and still things. Even though there's not a game, I will still have a show this Thursday. I guess let's talk a little bit recruiting. There was a bit of a recruiting hit last week. 4-star defensive end C.J. Jackson decommitted. He has a lot of this. He's a very good player. He's a high 4-star, very, very good. He's top 100 on On3. Like whatever recruiting service you use, whether it's 247 Rivals, whatever, they all have him rated as a pretty high player. His decommitment is a bit of a lot. It's a big loss for Georgia Tech. Like there's no other way to sugarcoat that or say it. Like it does hurt to lose him. You can say it was always a fear because of the programs that were after him. He's got big time offers. But it's definitely a loss. I think their class is still ranked 30th right now on 247 as I'm saying this right now. So big loss. We'll see if maybe they can fill that hole elsewhere, but still a solid recruiting class, but it does take a hit with CJ Jackson decommitting. I just wanted to hit on that because that happened, I believe, on Thursday before the game. So definitely a tough loss, but we'll see how they can maybe finish on the recruiting show and add to it. They've still got 25 commitments right now. They got 3 edge players, defensive end edge players committed. So we'll see what they're able to do in recruiting. But I will be back on Thursday. We will do a show. I appreciate anybody watching this. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit that notification bell whenever new content comes out. Listen on podcast form. Love if you could leave a review. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me see what I can improve on. I love doing all this for every Georgia Tech fan out there, hoping to grow this community as much as we can. And heck of a win. Like the miracle in Miami, it will forever be remembered in Georgia Tech history. The players will always remember it. Every Tech fan is going to remember it. Like that is just one of the most unbelievable finishes in college football. And somehow Georgia Tech finds their way on the good end of it generally. Like you have the miracle on Techwood Drive back in 2015. Like they find a way to get on the right end of these things. And then it was just an unbelievable experience. And we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. But I appreciate anybody joining me. I will see you guys on Thursday. And for anybody watching on YouTube, I'm sporting the Braves jersey. Big game tonight. Hopefully they can get it done after a disappointing game one. It was tough trying to keep up with that when that game started on Saturday. But, yeah, just go Braves, and hope to see y'all on Thursday.